All right, I think we're going to get started. So first, kind of a quick introduction. My name is Todd Zeigler. I'm the owner and founder of a DC-based web development firm called the Brick Factory. We're around 20 people, and we focus on building websites for nonprofits and advocacy groups.
Great, and my name is Dan Nisley. I am a product and UX designer. I have worked with or for Brick Factory for about 7 years now. I'm currently freelancing and working with Brick Factory on the Stacks module, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So, let's take you back to our web design process 7-ish years ago. So admittedly, this is a dated image. This isn't 7 years ago. This was 1999. But I love it. I love the big ties. I love the baggy shirts. And I love the square monitors. But just get you in the mood for what we're going to talk about. Fixed width websites that had a lot more simple design processes. So what we used to do. We used to work with clients to identify key pages of a site. We design those out as comps. The client would take a look at those comps, approve them. We build them out in HTML, CSS, and do some quality control and testing, and launch the site. So it's very simple. Throw in some IE testing, and you're there. But the times have changed. Today, we are dealing with hundreds of different screen sizes and devices. You can have anything from the size of a watch all the way on up to these massive 4K monitors that exist now, 5K, I guess. User interfaces are increasingly complex and interactive. We're dealing with things like animations, state changes, just complex functionality that exists on a page level. And this is really, really hard to capture in static comps. Clients are expecting and needing more flexibility in their systems. So clients are seeing beautiful interactive pages on the New York Times. They're seeing interactives that work really well in browser, and they're wanting to create those fast and efficient. And a lot of times they're wanting to create them themselves. So how do we take this need and want and turn it into a reality for them? So all of these changes result in a lot of headaches when you are trying to design on a page level, as you can imagine. The biggest problem that we've seen with static page-based design is that it's really inaccurate of how the website is used. So when you're actually interacting with elements on the page, just seeing pictures of it just isn't reflective of how you're actually going to use and feel the website. So we've all heard it a million times by now, page-based design doesn't work anymore. So what do we do? How do we fix it? So we design systems, not pages. So title of the talk could come around. But that's easier said than done. So what did we try? Admittedly, we fought through the page-based design process for a long time. We tried to tweak it to do hundreds of mobile comps and tablet comps and things like that, and it just didn't work. And I think as an industry, we've kind of realized that that's not the way forward. We tried centering our approach around a front-end framework. A few years ago, we picked Zerb's Foundation, and try to implement that from the design all the way through the front end. So we would have our designers take almost every single element that's in the framework, design them out, and turn that over to the front end team to be implemented and styled. What we found was that we ended up fighting the framework more often than not, and just kind of coloring in the framework wasn't working for what the end site would look like, and there were too many customizations in the framework itself. We tried creating massive, comprehensive static style guides. These were the bane of existence for our design team. They would spend hours and hours building these massive documents that reflected things like typography, every single HTML element, and everything you can think of under the sun. But immediately when we would turn those over to the front end team, they become dated because we didn't have a process in place to keep them updated and to continue to kind of build on it as the site build process would happen. We tried limiting comps and feedback loops with the client. So this was kind of one of our worst ideas, I think. We kind of kept the client in the shadows on a lot of the pages. We would limit the number of comps and kind of give them a taste of the site itself. And this ended up just with a lot of holes kind of in the end process and a lot of expectations that weren't met once we would turn over a functioning website. And then we also dabbled in a bunch of different CSS approaches and methodologies like object-oriented CSS and BEM. These were great for making our CSS more efficient, but they weren't solution that was a part of the whole entire process. Our design team didn't really care about this, and our clients don't really care about this. So this was only one part of the solution. So our process still felt really disconnected, even with these small solutions that we had kind of put in place. So Brick Factory is a Drupal-centric shop. Most of the sites are built in Drupal, so we wanted to develop a Drupal-centric solution. So what were the requirements? We wanted something that was easy for our clients to understand. We wanted to be able to talk to them about this is how we build Drupal websites from start to finish, including the design, the planning, to the front end, to the back end, to how they use the site. We wanted to establish a common language across all of our teams. So that meant our project managers understand what we're doing, to our design team, to our front-end developers, back-end developers, all the way straight through to the client. We wanted it to not be tied to a front-end framework or a trend in design. So we didn't want this to kind of fall to the wayside when we move on from flat design or Zerb's foundation changes or something like that. So we wanted to kind of get rid of those requirements and do something on our own. And with that, we wanted full control of the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript that we're using to build the site. So this is kind of what we needed. So you'll see that style guides, front-end frameworks, CSS methodologies kind of fit in certain parts of our process, but we needed something that would function all the way across. So what does this look like? So what we've moved to is more of a widget-based, component-based design process. What this starts with is a style kind of guidelines document that our designers put together. And this is vastly different than what we were doing in the past, where it was every HTML element, every little thing that you can imagine. And Todd will show kind of an example of what this looks like here in a moment. But this is meant to be a lighter weight design document that shows the visual direction of the site. And we get this approved by the client as well. That's taken by our front-end team and built into a living style guide and pattern library with a tool called Hologram. Unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot of time to talk about Hologram, but it's a fantastic tool, and I've included a link to it at the end of the presentation. What this does is it makes our living style guide an accurate representation of our live CSS. So everything that we build is also reflected in the style guide, and it's commented, and it ends up being a front-end spec. We've broken our sites into what we call widgets. Widgets, components, modules. There's a bunch of different names for these things. We call them widgets. These are meant to be pieces of the site that encapsulate a certain amount of functionality. So this could be anything from a block of text to a media gallery to an email sign up, a news feed, anything you can kind of think of that, as a client, you would think, I want to have, an email call to action here. That's how we design it. So it's a block of functionality that kind of encapsulates something. And then we still do designs for a few select pages. We found that this kind of eases the approval process with our clients. When we still design a home page for them, there's a certain level of comfort in knowing what's going to be on the page, how it's going to flow together. And then we'll take other unique pages throughout the site and design those out as well. And then we take those designs and we create widget prototypes. So these are built directly in Drupal with our module stacks, which we'll talk about here in a second. And these are an actual representation of how it's going to look and feel. And that's when we start dumping in content. So you can actually kind of start playing around with the widget earlier rather than trying to design it out statically. So how do we take it a step further with stacks? And Todd will kind of show some examples of this, but stacks is basically a module that we've created to take that widget-based component-driven design and put it into the Drupal admin. It's kind of similar. There's other ways you can go about doing this too. Paragraphs is very similar. But this allows us to design these widgets, and the client can add content onto a page level in those widgets. So essentially, if you wanted a block of text at the top of the page, followed by an email sign up, followed by a feed of your latest press releases, that's all done directly in the Drupal admin through a quick and easy just drop down, where you're adding different types of widgets and just configuring them onto the page. So we talked about this abstractly. I think the easiest way to kind of dive into it and understand what we're doing is to see an example. So I'll turn it over to Todd to do a walkthrough.
You go that way?
Sure, yeah, I'll go this way.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through design deliverables for a new project we're working on for a client called African Parks. I'm going to kind of jump ahead in terms of the design process and show you kind of the visual design portion. You can assume that before we've kind of gotten to these deliverables that we've done some concepting, strategy with the client, put together some wireframes, and kind of gotten to a point where we're actually doing visual work instead of kind of the whole process. So this is an example of a style guide that we'll show to the client. The style guide's also, in addition to being shown to the client, we also use this internally. So we'll turn this over to our front-end team that they use kind of as a guideline for the actual development of the website. So we've got some background colors, which are important. As I go through the widgets, you'll kind of understand these better. Text colors, I'll just kind of scroll through this quickly. Basic typography, bullet styles, block quote styles, some button explorations. On this site, we've got different buttons that are used for different reasons. Donate is a different color from others' calls to action, so that's outlined here. Then we're showing our nav system when it's on an image background, as well as our nav system when it's on a white background. And lastly, we designed the grid. We defined the grid that we're using for development. As mentioned, this is shown to the client for approval and review, and also shown to our internal team and used as part of the design turnover. So once we have the style guide, the next step is showing the client the widgets. And as the widgets that we're developing, and kind of it's basically a kind of Lego approach. The widgets are basically the tools that the client will use to put the pages together. So on the African parks, they're African parks, so they have animals and beautiful photography. So this site is very visually intense. So one of the widgets we're putting together is what I call a visual header. So this is a case where we kind of want a giant image to open the page. So this visual header has a bunch of different configurations. We've got a version of this where we're putting an image behind it. We've got a version where we're putting a video that's kind of playing in the background. We also have versions where we can make it a little skinnier. So we've got a layout where it's going full screen, filling your screen. Got another layout where it takes up about half the screen. We've got layouts where we're able to put in multiple photos, so it's kind of operates as a slideshow. And then we've got some other configuration options where you can go through and move where the text is based on the photo, etc. Some of the pages on the site aren't going to have that giant image, so we're defining the style for those pages where we have a headline with a secondary headline and a rule. So this is kind of our style for more simple text-based pages. And we've got some variations here where we're kind of showing date, author information, article types, etc. So that's kind of our more simple page intro style. So text is important. So we're showing kind of what the typography looks like, defining our column width here, showing what the subheadline style looks like, showing what a button looks like in this context, showing we've got this kind of what we call note feature, where we're pulling out text on the left here so they can highlight text, and we're also showing what it looks like with a photo embedded. Those background colors that we showed you on the style guide, those are important because as you add these widgets to the site, we're allowing you to change what we call the theme. So you might have a white background, you might have a blue background, you might have a sand background. Those are our three primary colors on the site. So as you add text to the site, you can actually change the background color as you add it. And that's more useful in other modules, but it is something that's done with text sometimes. We've got different photo treatments. So we've got the option for them to add a photo that fills our column. We've got an option for them to add a photo that has a caption. An option to add a photo that kind of breaks out of the column a little bit. And then an option for a photo that goes just full screen. So this basically fills up your entire screen. And they have the option when they add this actually to fix it. So as you scroll down the page, the photo kind of stays in the background like a lot of sites you've seen. We've also got a widget for photo galleries. And once again, we have configuration options as you're adding this in the back end to kind of control the look and feel. So we've got a version on a white background. We've got a version on a blue background. We've got a version with captions. Got a version with blue background captions. And then we've got an option showing you what it looks like when you click on that full screen option like you do with a YouTube video. So it kind of breaks out and has the ability to kind of close it. African Parks is a nonprofit, so raising money and building their email list is a big part of what they want to do. So we're going to want to put email signups on any page that they build. So we've got a version where that's, once again, a visual version using imagery, a version with our blue background, a version with our white background. They also, this widget here is called the call to action widget. So this is basically where they want to kind of have some pull-out text and a link, either to learn more about the issue on a page they're promoting, to a donate page, etc. Once again, in the back end, you can configure this to kind of have different colors, to have multiple buttons, one button, etc. Then we've got what we call our content feed. So this is basically the style that we're using when we have like a series of news articles that we want to display on a page, or publications, what have you. Once again, this is really highly configurable. You can select how many rows of results you want to show. You can select whether you want to show pagination. You can select whether you want these filters, article type, part, etc., to appear. So as you add this, you can change it to kind of do whatever you want it to do. There's an example of what the filters look like, and here's an example where it's been configured not to show the teaser image if you've got more text-based resources. And then the last module we'll show you is our donate module. So as I said, they want to raise money. So we give them the ability to insert this donate module on any page with a big background image. There's another version of this, which I'm not showing, which actually is much smaller. So the donate is kind of reoriented so it kind of fits in a more concise way. This is a version where it's really filling up the page. So those are kind of the widgets. So I showed you about half the widgets that we've designed for this project, just for in the sake of time. On the back end, basically once we've got the site built, the client has tools that they can go in and configure the pages to include the widgets. So I'll just kind of very quickly walk you through this, and this is powered by our Stacks module. You go in, you basically have this page where you select the widget. I've selected a visual header here. This first option, if this widget had multiple templates, you'd see multiple little thumbnails that you could choose. And then the theme, those are those colors we talked about. So this widget is configurable based on those two options. Then you basically put in your info. So you put in your image, you put in your headline, you put in your text, you put in how you want the text aligned, put in your button information, etc. And then you're done. You've added that widget to the page. You have the option then to add another widget, whatever you want, some text, some photos, whatever you want, and then you can move those around as you need to using this module. All of this is in Drupal. So what do we show the client? How does this kind of come together in the end? We really try to kind of educate the clients and have them really focus on kind of approving the overall templates, style guides, and then basically those widgets that we talked about. Our clients tend to be not developers. Our clients tend to be communication folks. We're working with nonprofits. They're very smart people who working on the website is maybe a small part of what they do. It's not their entire job. So what we've found is when we show them pages, like here's what your homepage looks like, here's what your newsroom or your about page is going to look like, no matter how much we talk about it, they react to content. They react to the words. They react to the pictures. They're reacting to that. What you're showing me is what's going to end up being the website, and that's the about page. And that scares me because I don't like that picture and I don't like those words. So that's all. You'll get all reactions about that. Very little comments about actually what you care about, which is structure, features, functionality. So what we try to do is show very few pages just to give a sense of what it looks like, what it might look like, and not try to show them something that's an accurate representation of an actual page. So here's a page with our nav system at the top. We've got that really simple kind of text-based header. We've got some text with a photo. We've got our little note that we showed. We've got a call to action module, and this would go full screen. I'm showing you this in Envision. But this would theoretically go full screen and fill the screen with our little buttons. We got some more text. Then we got one of those giant photos we talked about, and we've got a email sign-up module. So the client would just go in, put this together. They've built a really nice looking page on their own without us having to do anything other than having done all this work before. All the stuff I already did. Here's an example of what the newsroom looks like. So we've got kind of a headline. We've got our filtering system. We've got a bunch of rows of results, the pagination we talked about, and then at the bottom we're showing our email sign up again. So this is just a 2-widget page. We got a new content feed, and then we got an example of our email sign up. All right, and then we did show them in this case an example of their homepage with actual content, just because we found you got to do the homepage. No matter how much we'd like not to, we do. So this is including this first widget you see is the visual header that we showed you in the beginning. Then these are some other widgets that we've developed that I didn't walk through. This one is basically our work thing. This is an interactive they use to kind of go through the parks that they manage. Then we've got that news area. Then we've got the email sign up that we talked about, and then another widget called a list widget that we're using to kind of list various kind of links to various things. And that's basically kind of the process. That's kind of what we show the client. After we got that approval, we're then in the process of building the site. And what we're trying to do is quickly get the design process efficiently done so we can then start building. And then we can do more work actually after we have the prototype, after we've put together something that they can react to. Instead of kind of spending 6 months doing 50 million page comps that the client's reacting to. We're trying to quickly show them the tools they're using to build the pages instead of the pages themselves. So let me go back to the slides. And I've got all this in the presentation that we'll post. I just kind of prefer to do it in Vision because I can scroll. Scrolling is good sometimes. All right. So kind of in the end, I would say that this doesn't make the design process easy. It doesn't really solve every single problem. But what we think it does is that it basically makes our design process more focused. It allows us to go more quickly, produce simpler deliverables that are kind of easier for us to iterate on. It's a lot easier to design one of these little widgets and show them and iterate off that than it is a really complicated homepage like I showed you at the end. It also kind of helps us to tie everything together. So the tools that we're showing them in the beginning as part of the design process are the same tools they're going to use when they're building the site. So the admin experience, the front-end development experience, and the design experience are all kind of tied together. And this basically, in the end, when we turn the site over, kind of using that module we talked about, stacks, it gives the client the ability to build really rich, intense pages without us. So they can build this page with a beautiful background image, a beautiful header, a feed of content without us having to intercede. So these pages would take a long time for us to hand build in Drupal. This system and this approach allows them to do the work themselves. So Dan, do you have anything that I've forgotten? Or should we wrap up?
I think we can wrap up. I mean, the other thing I would flag is that yeah, I'll get back up into the microphone, I guess. To kind of piggyback on what Todd was saying, one of my favorite things about this approach is that we haven't lost design integrity. So we're able to kind of provide the client flexibility while also making that within the structure of what we've designed. So many times with, I don't know if you've used in WordPress, there's Visual Composer, or there's these modules that exist that are very, very flexible, almost too flexible, so you can kind of do whatever you want, create vast amounts of layouts and things. We found that our clients get into a lot of trouble when that happens, and by providing them the flexibility of themes and templates and layouts that are just configured via drop-down and predefined for them, it allows them the flexibility they need while also keeping the design consistent. So that's the only other thing I would flag.
Yeah. So any questions, comments? Yes.
Is that module available for use?
It is. We actually just released it about a month or two ago. It's called Stacks. It's on Drupal. It's still in dev, but we're kind of working towards trying to release a further version before DrupalCon.
In Drupal 8?
Yes.
It's in Drupal 8, nothing else. So.
Is there like a big difference between stacks and paragraphs?
So they're going in different directions, I think, in terms of what we want to do with it. Our goal is to really kind of have stacks be a little bit more all-encompassing. We want predefined widgets, things like that. We're incorporating things like A/B testing, front-end editing. So we love paragraphs. It's a fantastic option, and I would absolutely, if you want to check it out, to do similar things, it's a great option for it. But when we started building stacks, this was a couple years ago now, we determined that we kind of needed something custom on our end to work from.
What kind of is different, just at a high level, between the architectures? I mean, briefly. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm not a developer, so I can't go into too much detail in terms of the dependencies and things like that. But on a high level, I would say we offer a predefined admin experience, so that's all
Nice.
styled. There are front end editing is something we're working on currently. That's going to be rolled into the modules, the widget system itself. So there's just a lot of kind of specifics that we wanted to focus on that we felt we kind of needed to build our own base to work on. So.
Thanks.
Just want to mention, there is a session on paragraphs
Yeah.
tomorrow morning
Yes.
at 11:30.
Mhm.
Yes.
Just a similar question about the style guide tool you guys are using. So is Hologram that you're using?
Yes, so Hologram is it's a tool built by Trulia, and on a basic level, what it allows you to do is comment within your CSS.
Yeah.
Have you used it before, or is it?
Similar things.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, my question was going to be, what you see as advantages to that as opposed to other tools. If you guys have any.
Sure. What we liked about Hologram specifically was that it was a representation of our live CSS. We've used there's a variety of other tools that kind of do similar things. Our front end team just felt most comfortable with Hologram. Honestly, that's not something I deal with on a day-to-day basis, so I can't speak to the specifics. But I do know in the planning process we explored a couple different tools, and that was one they chose. So.
And how do you bring accessibility compliance into that design process?
Sure. So, what part? I guess there's.
I guess at the point where you're doing the theming and the style guide.
Yeah, sure. So there are a few tools that we use on the design end, and then Todd, I don't know if you can speak to maybe the dev end, but we'll run through contrast filters, things like that, just on our own end, and that's kind of. Just done within the design team, I guess. We kind of have some basic websites that we use to run things through. In terms of the dev, I don't know. Do you have anything to tack on to
I
that?
don't really have any great answer. Our devs aren't here and better at answering that. So you stumped the panel. Good job. Somebody's always got to do it. Any other questions? Cool. Well, thank you for coming. We'll post the slides. We'll post the slides to the talk. We appreciate everybody coming.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.